All right, let's dive into a bit of a digital detective story. It's a high-stakes mystery that plays out every single day inside some of the world's biggest companies. We're calling it the case of the missing invoice.
So picture this. A huge company ships a product or they deliver a service, and when it's time to collect their money, nothing happens. The invoice just won't generate. The entire flow of cash just slams to a halt. So what on earth is going on?
And look, we're not talking about some minor inconvenience here. A single, often cryptic, error code can freeze the entire order-to-cash cycle. We're talking millions, sometimes even billions, in revenue, just stuck. To figure this out, we have to treat it like a crime scene.
Yeah, that's what we're dealing with. An error that often shows up as billing document not generated. And you can think of it as a digital vault door that's just been slammed shut. The money is right there on the other side, but you can't get to it. And to crack it, you really do have to think like a detective. Now, this right here, this is the golden rule of our investigation. The problem, the scene of the crime, it's almost never the invoice itself. The mistake, the real issue, happened way earlier in the process. The invoice is just where we found the body. So what's the first thing our detective does? Well, they don't guess. They don't just start throwing theories around. They go straight back to the scene and they replicate the error. They need to gather hard evidence. No speculation, just the facts.
And this is where you can tell a rookie from a real pro. A rookie just looks at the status bar and sees that generic message, document not created. Useless. But the expert, our detective, they know the real clue is buried one level deeper, inside the system log. That's where you find the specific error code, our first real piece of evidence pointing us in the right direction.
Okay, the next tool in the kit is something called the billing due list. The best way to think about this is like the detective's list of open cases. If the order we're investigating isn't even on this list, well, that changes everything. It means the system doesn't even think it's ready to be billed yet. So suddenly we're not looking for a billing problem anymore. We're hunting for a readiness problem. Big difference.
All right, with those first clues in hand, now we can start to line up the usual suspects. You know, the most common reasons an invoice just disappears into thin air.
And here's the really good news for our investigation. Even though this whole thing seems incredibly complex, a whopping 90% of all these cases are caused by just 4 types of problems. That's huge. It means we know exactly where to focus our search. And when we break down those cases, one category just towers above the rest. A full half of all problems are what you'd call simple process and status errors. These are by far the most frequent culprits, so that's exactly where we're going to look first.
And who is suspect number 1? The billing block. Now, the key thing to understand here is that this is not a glitch. It's a deliberate roadblock. Someone or some automated process has intentionally put a hold on this order. You know, maybe the customer went over their credit limit, or maybe there's an ongoing dispute.
So our detective knows the exact spots to search for these roadblocks. They'll check the main order information, they'll check the individual items on the order, and they'll be on the lookout for a sneaky credit hold that might be acting as a billing block in disguise.
The other really common status error is just fundamental business logic. I mean, it makes perfect sense. You can't get paid for something that is still sitting in your warehouse. The system needs to see a post-goods issue, or PGI. It's just the digital proof that says, yep, the product is officially out the door. No PGI, no invoice. It's really as simple as that. But what if it's not a simple status issue? Well, then our detective has to go deeper. They have to start decoding the system's core logic, the technical gatekeepers that are controlling this whole process behind the scenes. Which leads to a pretty interesting question, right? How does the system actually know what rules to follow? How does it know that, say, a shipment of a physical product needs to be treated totally differently than a consulting service when it comes time to create an invoice? The answer is a fascinating concept called copy controls. Honestly, the best way to think about this is as the system's DNA. It is a fundamental, totally unbendable set of rules that dictates exactly how information is allowed to be copied from one document, like a delivery confirmation, into another, like the final invoice. If that DNA code is wrong, the process just breaks. And a critical part of that DNA is a setting called billing relevance. It is incredible that a single letter, just one code, determines the entire billing personality of a product. So, for example, code A means bill me after I ship, perfect for physical stuff. But if you accidentally assign that A to a service, Well, the system is going to wait forever for a shipment that's never going to happen. Getting just one letter wrong here is a classic reason for a missing invoice.
So, with all this knowledge, how do we pull it all together? A real pro doesn't just run around randomly looking for clues. No, they have a systematic playbook that they follow to solve the case every single time.
And that strategy is a really clear four-phase approach. You start with the easy stuff, right? A sanity check for those obvious blocks or status issues. Next, you validate the system's rules, things like those copy controls. If you're still stuck, then you dive into the financial data. And only as a last resort do you bring out the heavy-duty technical tools to do a deep dive on the code. The beauty is you move from simple to complex, and that solves 90% of cases in just those first two steps.
It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? We just took a deep look at one tiny error in one small corner of the business world. But it makes you think, how many other invisible, complex processes just like this one are running right now, quietly deciding whether a massive global company is going to succeed or fail? Definitely something to think about.